From submerged Mayan temples to ancient mammoth and ground sloth bones laying at the bottom of deep-sea caverns, these are some of the craziest discoveries made in underwater caves. The cenotes in the Yucatan Peninsula were super important to the Maya. These water-filled sinkholes weren't just places to get fresh water, they were seen as gateways to the underworld. For the Maya, they were more than just natural wonders. Guillermo de Anda, a specialist from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, said these cenotes were, quote, the main scenario of the myth of creation for the Maya. And these cenotes really are like a hidden world. Above the surface, they look like beautiful spots with crystal clear water, lush vegetation, and massive stalactites, but underwater, these cenotes lead to massive labyrinths of underwater caves, some of which are still mostly unexplored. People practiced rituals here. Offerings, altars, even bones have been discovered deep inside, giving us a look at how crucial these places were to Mayan life. One of the most famous cave systems is Sac Actun. It's the largest underwater cave in the world, believed to connect to other cave systems, possibly making the whole network over 1,000 kilometers or just over 620 miles long. Inside these caves, explorers have found Mayan artifacts, animal remains, and even evidence of human sacrifices. The cenotes and caves of the Yucatan could completely change how we understand the early Maya, with some of the discoveries hinting at settlements and rituals long before the rise of the classic Maya civilization. In the spring of 2017, divers Sam Meacham and Fred Davos squeezed their way through a tight passageway, only 28 inches wide, deep in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. After swimming for half a mile, they finally reached what they couldn't believe was in front of them. A 11,000-year-old ochre mine, untouched and almost perfectly preserved. The site, named La Mina, was a time capsule. There were pits, broken stalactites used as hammers, and even old charcoal from fires. Early humans have been extracting red ochre pigment, which was later used in everything from cave paintings to mortuary rituals. Archaeologist Brandy MacDonald had been studying ochre for years and said this discovery was unlike anything she'd ever seen. The discovery gave the researchers a rare look into how some of the first people in the Americas lived, long before the rise of the Mayan civilization. Scientists also found remains of early humans, most famously the remains of a girl they named Naya, who fell to her death around 13,000 years before. The question was, why had she gone so deep into the caves? As Roberto Junco from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History stated, what the hell were they going down there for? This wasn't an isolated site. Radiocarbon dating revealed at least 2 other ochre mines in the area dating back between 10,000 and 12,000 years ago. This shows that early humans had a sophisticated knowledge of their environment, with well-planned mining expeditions that lasted thousands of years. It's still a bit of a mystery as to why they went so deep into these caves, but there's a strong possibility that they weren't just used for practical reasons, they may have been spiritual too. The ochre they were mining was obviously important, often used in rituals. Holly Moyes, an expert on cave rituals, talked about how caves in early human history were often seen as sacred spaces, saying caves produced all kinds of good and evil, adding that the deep dark environments were perfect for rituals. For the Maya and other Mesoamerican cultures, ochre was sacred, possibly seen as a way to connect with the underworld. The Hoyo Negro, or Black Hole, is one of the most mysterious underwater caves in Mexico, and for good reason. Found once again in the Yucatan Peninsula, this place is kind of a time capsule. Scientists have discovered some really unexpected treasures here. When divers first explored it, they found an almost perfectly preserved set of remains belonging to a human who would have lived around 13,000 years ago, one of the earliest inhabitants of the Americas. The bones were also found along the remnants of extinct animals like mammoths, giant ground sloths, and saber-toothed tigers.
In our number 5 spot today, we have the watermelon snow algae. Scientists are growing increasingly uneasy about a bizarre phenomenon that's turning the Arctic's once pristine ice sheets a haunting shade of red. Known colloquially as watermelon snow, this eerie coloration is caused by massive blooms of rare algae species. But it's not just the unsettling hue that's causing alarm. These crimson algae absorb more sunlight, dramatically accelerating the melting of the ice and disrupting the delicate balance of the Arctic ecosystem. What's more is that recent expeditions oceans have reported that the areas affected seem to be expanding at an unnatural rate, with some researchers whispering about unknown factors fueling this explosive growth. Wildlife is acting strangely too. Polar bears avoiding their usual hunting grounds and migratory birds altering their flight paths to steer clear of the scarlet-stained ice. As the Arctic continues to bleed red, scientists fear we're witnessing the beginning of an environmental shift with consequences that we can't yet fully grasp. In our number 4 spot today, we are talking about the giant deep-sea creatures. Beneath the icy surface of the Arctic Ocean, rumors are swirling about colossal sea creatures that defy all scientific understanding, sending chills through the marine biology community. Local fishermen whisper about nets shredded by unseen giants and shadows that blot out the sunlight beneath their boats. Deep-sea explorers have reported anomalous readings, massive moving objects that vanish without a trace when approached. Some submersibles have even captured fleeting images of tentacles stretching into the darkness or enormous fins slicing through the frigid waters. Scientists fear these could be prehistoric behemoths awakened from eons of slumber by shifting climates and melting ice. The idea that such leviathans might be real is both exhilarating and absolutely terrifying, hinting at undiscovered links in the ocean's food chain. As research teams prepare to dive deeper than ever before, a daunting question hangs in the air. Are we ready to confront the monstrous mysteries that the thawing Arctic is beginning to unveil? In our number 3 spot today, we have the secret military installations. Rumors are swirling that the Arctic Ocean is concealing more than just ice and wildlife. Some believe it's home to secret military installations hidden beneath the frigid waters. Locals and explorers have reported unusual sightings: strange metallic structures peeking through the ice, unmarked vessels slipping silently through foggy nights, and mysterious transmissions interrupting radio signals. Even satellite images seem to blur or distort certain areas, fueling speculation that governments are masking something big. Scientists on research missions have stumbled upon restricted zones patrolled by unidentified personnel, and their equipment sometimes malfunctions without explanation. The strategic importance of the Arctic, with its untapped resources and new shipping lanes opening due to melting ice, makes these whispers even more intriguing. Could nations be quietly building underwater bases or testing advanced technologies away from prying eyes? The idea might sound like something out of a spy novel, but with so much at stake in this remote frontier, it's a question that keeps getting harder and harder to dismiss. In our number 2 spot today, we have the unusual light phenomena. Under the Arctic night sky, explorers and scientists are witnessing a mesmerizing yet unnerving spectacle of unexplained lights dancing across the horizon. These unusual light phenomena, often dubbed Arctic UFOs, flicker and swirl in patterns that defy natural explanations. While some attribute them to rare atmospheric conditions, shimmering auroras, or optical illusions created by ice crystals, others whisper about more mysterious origins. Reports describe lights moving in synchronized formations, changing colors with eerie precision, and sometimes hovering motionlessly before vanishing without a trace. Cameras and sensors occasionally capture these elusive displays, sparking intense debates among experts. Theories range from secret military experiments using advanced technologies to hints of extraterrestrial visitors observing our planet from the frozen depths. Locals share stories passed down through generations of strange lights guiding ships or signaling hidden dangers beneath the ice. As the Arctic continues to thaw and open up, these lights grow more frequent, leaving scientists both fascinated and fearful of what secrets the darkness might reveal. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Hollow Earth. Whispers of a hidden world beneath the Arctic ice have reignited one of the oldest and most tantalizing conspiracy theories: the existence of a hollow Earth. Adventurers and fringe theorists claim that massive entrances to this subterranean realm lie concealed at the poles, guarded by ancient forces or advanced technologies. Recent expeditions have stumbled upon inexplicable geological formations and vast unexplored caverns that some believe could be gateways to this mysterious inner world. Stories of eerie lights emanating from beneath the ice, coupled with unexplained seismic activity, only add fuel to this speculation. Locals share legends of secret passages and lost civilizations thriving in the darkness below, untouched by time. While mainstream science dismisses these claims as fanciful myths, the allure of discovering a hidden civilization or untapped resources keeps the mystery alive. As ice caps continue to melt and new areas become accessible, the possibility of uncovering something extraordinary captivates the imagination. Could there truly be an undiscovered world waiting beneath the frozen surface, or is this just another captivating chapter in the Arctic's long history of mysterious secrets?
The ocean floor contains nuclear weapons that were never recovered, and governments quietly stopped looking for them. In 1966, a U.S. Air Force B-52 bomber collided mid-air with a refueling plane over Spain. 4 hydrogen bombs fell from the sky, 3 were recovered on land, and 1 vanished into the Mediterranean Sea. After an intense search, the bomb was located more than 2,500 feet underwater. Recovery teams confirmed it was intact, but the search revealed something worse. This was not the only nuclear weapon lost at sea. During the Cold War, multiple nuclear bombs and reactors were accidentally dropped into the ocean due to crashes, sinkings, and emergency jettisons. Some were recovered, others were not. Sonar surveys and classified naval records confirm that several nuclear devices still rest on the ocean floor today. Their exact locations remain classified, their condition is unknown, and the disturbing reality is that some of the most powerful weapons ever created are just sitting in darkness beneath the waves. The ocean exposed a friendly fire tragedy no one wanted to admit. German submarine U-869 vanished in 1945. For decades, the U.S. Navy believed it had sunk off Africa. In 1991, divers discovered a U-boat wreck off the coast of New Jersey. It was U-869. The wreck showed damage consistent with American depth charges, not German scuttling. Historical records were re-examined. The truth emerged that the submarine had been sunk by U.S. forces off the American coast, and the mistake had been covered up. Inside the wreck, divers found human remains still trapped at their stations. The ocean floor revealed a wartime error buried by paperwork. They found what remained of the deepest dive ever attempted. In 1960, the bathyscaphe Trieste descended nearly 36,000 feet into the Challenger Deep. Decades later, pieces of wreckage from experimental deep-sea vehicles were found scattered across the trench floor. Crushed metal, shattered viewports, and failed pressure housings told a brutal story of engineering limits being exceeded. Some of the wreckage belonged to unmanned probes that imploded instantly. Others showed signs of gradual structural failure. The ocean floor became a graveyard of human ambition. When they finally found the submarine, it was crushed so completely that the Navy realized the crew never knew what killed them. In 1963, the USS Thresher was conducting deep dive tests in the Atlantic Ocean when it suddenly stopped responding. On board were 129 sailors and civilian technicians. The submarine vanished during a routine test dive, and months later, deep-sea search equipment located the wreck nearly 8,400 feet below the surface. What investigators found was disturbing. The submarine had imploded. The hull was scattered across the seabed in thousands of pieces. Analysis of the debris showed that a single pipe joint likely failed, flooding the engine room. The reactor shut down automatically, and without power, the submarine could not surface. As it sank deeper, the pressure exceeded the hull's limits. The implosion would have occurred in milliseconds. The crew likely had no warning, no distress call, no final moments of panic, just instant destruction. The Thresher disaster permanently changed how submarines were built. The ocean floor proved that even the most advanced machines can fail silently. The ocean floor holds radioactive secrets no one talks about. Between the 1940s and the 1970s, multiple countries dumped nuclear waste into the ocean. Thousands of barrels were sealed and dropped into deep water. Modern surveys have located many of them. Some are leaking, others are ruptured. Radiation levels around certain sites are elevated. Marine life shows abnormalities, and the exact contents of many barrels are unknown. The disturbing truth is that the ocean floor is still being used as a hiding place for humanity's most dangerous mistakes.
The Stronsay beast is a mysterious creature that washed ashore on the island of Stronsay in the Orkney Islands, Scotland, after a storm on September 25th of 1808. This large globster measured an impressive 55 feet in length, and part of its tail was missing too, so it was even longer. Till this day, nobody knows exactly what this thing could have been, but the fun theory is, of course, that it was some sort of sea serpent similar to Nessie. But it's believed that this could have been a decayed basking shark, and that the measurement given at the time was embellished. Eyewitnesses described the Stronsay beast having 3 pairs of appendages, which were referred to as paws or wings. The skin texture was particularly unusual. It felt smooth when stroked from head to tail, but rough when stroked in the opposite direction. Its fins were edged with bristles, and there was a row of bristles down its back that reportedly glowed in the dark when wet. The mysterious case of the witchcraft. On the evening of December 22, 1967, Daniel Burke, a Florida real estate developer, was out on his 23-foot yacht with a friend, Father Patrick Horgan, who was a Catholic priest. They had only gone about a mile out to sea, supposedly to enjoy the view of the Miami skyline at night, and things took a strange turn when the witchcraft became disabled. Burke managed to put out a distress call asking for a tow back to port, but he made sure to mention that it wasn't an emergency. Just 15 minutes later, though, a Coast Guard patrol boat arrived at their reported location, but to everyone's shock, there was no sign of the witchcraft or the 2 men. It was as if they had just vanished into thin air. The Coast Guard quickly launched a full search operation, scouring the area for a week without finding any clues, and there was no trace of the yacht, no debris, no personal belongings, nothing. It's 2026 to 2031 now. The complete disappearance of the witchcraft, along with Burke and Horgan, remains one of the most baffling maritime mysteries, and there was all these extensive searches, but the case has never been solved, leaving more questions than answers. And one theory is that they intentionally disappeared, which is certainly possible. Next, let's talk about Bimini Road. Discovered off the coast of North Bimini Island in the Bahamas back in 1968. There's a lot of debate and controversy surrounding this site. It's made up of a series of rectangular limestone blocks arranged in what looks to be a very straight line. It looks almost like a road, hence the name. And the discovery was first noted by pilots flying over the area, and when divers explored it further, they confirmed that there was indeed something unusual down there. Mainstream scientists say Bimini Road is just beach rock, formed by sand and shell fragments that have cemented together over time, arguing that it's a natural formation, but that hasn't stopped some people thinking it could be connected to possibly legendary lost cities like Atlantis, who think that the straight lines and all the right angles are just too precise to be natural. And finally, we have the Baltic Sea anomaly. Back in 2011, the Swedish deep-sea diving team Ocean X was searching for a shipwreck when they stumbled upon a bizarre sonar image on the seafloor of the northern Baltic Sea. The shape did not look like a natural formation, and people just love a good UFO story, so the strange object was soon dubbed the Baltic Sea anomaly, and there's been a lot of debate ever since it was found. Once the images hit the news, tabloids jumped on it, claiming the object could be some sort of alien technology or the remnants of an ancient civilization. The anomaly measures about 197 feet in diameter and sits at a depth of around 295 feet. So, is this thing a natural formation? Could this be remnants of something more intriguing, like an ancient spaceship? What do you all think?
They found on the ocean floor confirmed that the crew survived longer than anyone was told. In January 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger broke apart 73 seconds after launch. The disaster was broadcast live, and for years the public was told the crew died instantly. But when Navy and NASA teams began recovering debris from the Atlantic Ocean floor, they discovered something deeply disturbing. The crew cabin was found mostly intact, resting more than 1,000 feet below the surface. Inside, investigators recovered personal items, intact control panels, and most unsettling of all, possible evidence that at least some of the astronauts were conscious after the explosion. Several emergency oxygen packs had been manually activated. These packs could only be turned on intentionally. That could mean at least one crew member survived the initial breakup. The cabin hit the ocean at over 300 miles per hour, and no parachutes existed. There was no escape. The realization that the astronauts may have experienced a silent free fall for over 2 minutes before impact permanently changed how NASA classified crew fatalities. When they found the black boxes, they finally learned how everyone died. Air France Flight 447 disappeared over the Atlantic Ocean in June 2009 while traveling from Rio de Janeiro to Paris. For 2 years, the aircraft remained lost, scattered across the ocean floor nearly 13,000 feet below the surface. When robotic submersibles finally located the wreckage, investigators recovered the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder. What those devices revealed was disturbing. The plane had not exploded. It had not broken apart. Instead, it entered a stall that the pilots never recognized. For over 3 minutes, the aircraft fell nose up, engines producing thrust, alarms sounding, while the crew repeatedly made the wrong inputs. The voice recorder captured confusion, disbelief, and mounting panic. At no point did the pilots realize the plane was stalling. The final moments recorded calm voices discussing altitude seconds before impact. The ocean kept this secret for 72 years. In 1945, the USS Indianapolis delivered key components of the atomic bomb to Tinian Island. Days later, it was torpedoed by a Japanese submarine. The ship sank in 12 minutes. Nearly 900 sailors ended up in the water. Sharks arrived within hours, and over 4 days, exposure, dehydration, and repeated shark attacks reduced the survivors to just 316. For decades, the exact wreck location remained unknown. In 2017, a privately funded expedition finally found it more than 18,000 feet down in the Philippine Sea. The wreck was shockingly intact. Hull numbers were still visible, anti-aircraft guns were frozen in place, personal equipment lay scattered across the seabed. The recovery confirmed survivor accounts that had been doubted for years. The ship went down fast, the distress signals were never received, and the crew was abandoned not by incompetence, but by silence. The ocean floor validated one of the most horrific survival stories in naval history. Divers expected to find shipwrecks, but instead they found entire submarines built for crime and intentionally sunk. In recent decades, law enforcement agencies have discovered dozens of homemade submarines on the ocean floor, particularly in the Atlantic and Pacific substance trafficking routes. These vessels were built by criminal organizations to transport illicit substances across oceans while avoiding detection. Once the cargo was delivered, crews would intentionally scuttle the submarines and abandon them. Some of these wrecks were found with supplies still on board, others showed signs of sudden flooding, a few were located with human remains inside, suggesting something went wrong during the voyage. They found the ship deeper than any warship wreck ever discovered, and it proved the crew fought until the very last second. In October 1944, the USS Johnston, a small American destroyer, charged directly at a vastly superior Japanese fleet during the Battle of Lake Gulf. The ship was outgunned, outnumbered, and doomed. In 2021, the wreck was found nearly 21,000 feet below in the Philippine Sea. This made it the deepest known shipwreck ever discovered. The condition of the wreck stunned historians. Gun turrets were still aimed forward, torpedo mounts were in firing position. The ship showed signs of massive damage, but also signs of continued combat until sinking. The wreck confirmed survivor accounts that the crew continued fighting even after losing steering, communications, and power. The ocean floor preserved physical proof of one of the most desperate and heroic last stands in naval history.
Starting off today in our number 10 spot, we have the magnetic anomalies. Navigators venturing into certain parts of the Arctic Ocean have reported their compasses going haywire, pointing in unexpected directions and making navigation a very tricky affair. These strange magnetic anomalies aren't just throwing off explorers, they're stirring up concern among scientists studying Earth's magnetic field. The magnetic North Pole has been drifting faster in recent years, and these Arctic oddities cavities might be hints of deeper changes happening within our planet's core. This shift could have ripple effects on everything from navigation systems to the migratory patterns of animals that rely on Earth's magnetic cues. As researchers investigate these mysterious disturbances, they're very keen to uncover what's causing the magnetic mayhem and what it could mean for our technologically dependent world. Could these anomalies be early signs of significant changes in Earth's magnetic behavior? In our number 9 spot today, we have the hidden civilizations. Deep beneath the Arctic's icy veil, tales are emerging of ancient cities entombed in the frozen depths, sparking both excitement and fear among those who hear them. Explorers have reported glimpses of geometric shapes and structures beneath thinning ice sheets, formations that look eerily artificial. Some scientists on remote expeditions have picked up anomalous readings on their equipment, suggesting massive, unexplained objects lying on the ocean floor. Adding to the mystery, a few fishermen have hauled up peculiar artifacts in their nets, intricately carved stones and metallic devices etched with symbols that don't match any known language. While official explanations chalk these up to natural phenomena or modern debris, whispers grow louder that we might be uncovering the remnants of a civilization lost to time. As the Arctic ice continues to recede, one can't help but wonder, are we on the brink of rewriting history with discoveries hidden beneath the polar ice? In our number 8 spot today, we have the disappearances. Throughout history, the Arctic Ocean has swallowed entire expeditions without a trace, leaving behind only whispers of their mysterious fates. The Franklin expedition of the 19th century is perhaps the most haunting. 2 ships and 129 men vanished into the icy abyss, sparking countless theories but offering few answers. Recent findings of their eerily preserved ships beneath the frozen waters have raised more questions than they solve. Some artifacts hint at sudden madness among the crew, while local legends speak of malevolent forces guarding the polar realms. Modern explorers retracing their routes report unsettling phenomena, compasses spinning wildly, unearthly sounds echoing through the mist, and fleeting shadows beneath the ice that defy explanation. As scientists delve deeper into these anomalies, they're beginning to fear that the Arctic hides more than just harsh weather. It may conceal secrets that challenge our understanding of nature itself. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Paulinas. The Arctic Ocean is throwing scientists for a loop with the sudden appearance of massive Paulinas, huge patches of open water that inexplicably emerge in the midst of solid sea ice. These anomalies aren't just small gaps, some are large enough to be spotted by satellites, leaving experts scratching their heads. Marine life seems equally perplexed, with whales and seals venturing into these unexpected open waters while predators follow close behind, disrupting the natural order of the ecosystem. Some researchers speculate that hidden geothermal activity or shifting ocean currents might be tearing these holes into the ice, but no one really knows for sure. The rapid formation of these Paulinas is altering local climates, affecting everything from weather patterns to the migration of species. As the mysteries deepen, scientists are growing increasingly concerned. Could these startling events be signaling even more dramatic changes lurking beneath the Arctic's frozen surface? In our number 6 spot today, we have the frozen methane pingos. The Arctic Ocean is revealing yet another chilling secret. Enormous underwater mounds called frozen methane pingos that could be ticking time bombs beneath the ice. These mysterious hills, some towering as high as skyscrapers, are filled with pressurized methane gas trapped for millennia. Recent dives have shown these pingos bulging ominously, with cracks spiderwebbing across their surfaces and strange bubbles rising to the frigid surface waters. Scientists are alarmed because if one of these giants were to rupture, it could unleash a massive surge of methane, a greenhouse gas far more potent than carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere, potentially accelerating climate change overnight. Even more unsettling is the possibility of abrupt environmental shifts. Imagine entire ecosystems thrown into chaos by sudden temperature spikes or massive underwater landslides tides, triggering tsunamis. Researchers are racing against time to understand these hidden behemoths before they decide to awaken. Could these frozen giants hold the key to a climatic domino effect no one is prepared for?
In 1978, the USS Stein, a United States Navy frigate, was cruising through part of the Pacific Ocean. Out of nowhere, the ship's sonar systems went haywire, completely shutting down. The crew scrambled to get things back online, but they were forced to head back to dock to figure out what went wrong. When they inspected the sonar, they found something horrifying. Huge slashes, each about 4 feet long, and embedded in these gashes were what looked to be massive teeth. Well, it turned out these teeth were actually the claws of a squid's suction cup, and this must have been a pretty big squid. The biggest giant squid we've ever found was 59 feet in length. This is not an urban legend, this is a documented case. The damage to the ship had been made by an enormous deep-sea beast lurking beneath the waves. Navy biologist F.G. Wood took a close look at these claws, and he couldn't rule out the possibility that they may have come from an undiscovered species of giant squid. What you're looking at is a mysterious golden orb that was discovered in the Gulf of Alaska by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration back in the fall of 2023. During the NOAA's Seascape Alaska 5 expedition, researchers discovered this strange blob. This blob was about 4 inches in diameter and was attached to a rock. The team used remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, to make the discovery. After examining it, scientists confirmed that the blob was biological, but they couldn't identify what it was. One thing to note about this blob was that it had a small hole in its surface. It looked like something had either entered or exited from it. So using a gentle suction device, the team carefully removed the orb and brought it to their ship for closer study. Deep-sea ecologist Carrie Howell mentioned that the blob might be a new species, or possibly an unknown life stage of a species that we already know about. But beyond these theories, we still don't have any concrete answers about what this blob actually is or was. Chuuk Lagoon, formerly known as Truk Atoll, is located in the Federated States of Micronesia and was the site of Japan's main naval base during World War II. In 1944, the US Navy launched Operation Hailstone, which sank over 60 Japanese warships and 250 aircraft. This event turned Chuuk Lagoon into one of the largest ship graveyards in the world. Today, beneath the waters of the lagoon, there are thousands of artifacts from World War II. You'll find gas masks, human skulls, sake bottles, even family photographs. The lagoon's been a popular destination for scuba divers. It looks like a pretty spectacular dive because the shipwrecks and artifacts are laying in crystal clear waters, often less than 50 feet deep. The calm waters allow divers to swim through the wrecks. In the holds of these massive vessels, there are remnants of fighter aircraft, tanks, bulldozers, railroad cars, motorcycles, torpedoes, mines, bombs, boxes of munitions. The Black Sea is a pretty wild place for underwater exploration. Not only are there tons of shipwrecks, but because the water is anoxic, it actually helps to preserve these wrecks really well. One of the coolest finds was an ancient Greek shipwreck discovered in 2018, which is over 2,400 years old. It was found super deep. It was over 6,500 feet down, making it one of the deepest shipwrecks ever found. The Black Sea is also home to ships from the Ottoman Empire and the World Wars, including naval and merchant vessels. Along with the ships, there are often personal items found too, like tools, weapons, and even human remains. The carnivorous deep-sea tunicate, aka the ghostfish. Well, that sounds pretty scary, and take a look at it. It is. They're found anchored along the walls of deep-sea canyons and the sea floor. What makes these tunicates unique is that they're not your typical filter feeders. Instead, they've adapted to become ambush predators. These predatory tunicates have a mouth like a siphon that quickly snaps shut whenever a small animal, like a crustacean or a fish, drifts inside. A bit like a Venus flytrap. Once they catch their meal, they keep their trap shut until the prey is fully digested. In terms of size, these tunicates are about 5 inches across and mostly feed on zooplankton and other tiny creatures. Interestingly, they reproduce by releasing both eggs and sperm into the water. If there aren't any other of their species around, they can even self-fertilize their eggs, ensuring their survival in the deep sea. But now for a much larger and creepier deep-sea creature, the giant phantom jelly. This is a very elusive species that wasn't formally recognized until 1959, but there were sightings before that. In total, though, there have only been about 110 sightings recorded in just over a century. Despite how rare they are, though, they're believed to live across the world's oceans, aside from the Arctic Ocean. This jellyfish is thought to be one of the largest invertebrate predators in its ecosystem, commonly found in the ocean's midnight and twilight zones at depths of around 21,800 feet. They're very strange looking creatures with an umbrella-shaped bell that can grow up to 3.5 feet across. Pliant tissue allows it to stretch to 4 or 5 times its size, likely to help it engulf its prey. And unlike many jellyfish, the giant phantom jelly does not have stinging tentacles, but does use its arms to trap and consume plankton and small fish, and it's able to do that easily, because its arms can reach lengths of up to 33 feet. Next up, we have the Russian submarine, the Losharik. Unlike other submarines, the Losharik wasn't a traditional vessel with a long hull. Instead, it was a special kind of submersible designed for deep-sea research and rescue. With its nuclear-powered engines and titanium spheres, it was a marvel of engineering. Apparently, I don't really know what titanium spheres are, but that's just what I read. During one of its missions in the Arctic Ocean in 2019, something went terribly wrong. There was a fire on board, 250 miles north of the Arctic Circle. The crew found themselves in a desperate situation. Submarines are already tight spaces, so as much as they tried to contain the fire, it just quickly spread. Now, fortunately, unlike the Kursk, the submarine was salvaged, and not everyone died here. Some were rescued, but the toll was heavy. 14 crew members died in the fire, including high-ranking officers and captains of other submarines. As for how the fire started, we don't really know. There aren't a lot of details, at least not publicly available. The Russian government didn't provide a whole lot of information about the incident. Next up, we once again have another Russian sub. On April 7th, 1989, the Soviets' K-8 embarked on its maiden voyage in the Barents Sea, but it would never return. It's still sitting at the bottom of the sea to this very day. A short circuit in the engine room sparked a fire, forcing the submarine to surface. Unfortunately, some of the crew died in the fire, and many did manage to escape, but at least half of them died in the icy waters. As flames consumed the vessel, it sank to the ocean floor. Expeditions in the mid-90s revealed that the K-8 was a radioactive nightmare, too. Its hull was severely damaged, and its nuclear arsenal was a ticking time bomb, and it seems like things have only gotten worse. Sea samples have been taken in recent years with abnormally high radiation levels close to the wreck, 100,000 times more radioactive than normal. The ARA San Juan was an Argentine Navy diesel-electric submarine that vanished without a trace off the coast of Argentina on November 15th of 2017. It was on a routine patrol in the South Atlantic Ocean and was en route to its home port when something went wrong and it suddenly disappeared. For days, there was no sign of the submarine. Search efforts were launched with ships and aircraft from multiple countries. Hopes continued to dwindle, though, as the search and rescue for the 44 people on board eventually became a search just for the missing wreck. Finally, on November 16th, 2018, a year after the sub had gone missing, the San Juan was discovered in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean. The submarine's hull had imploded. Debris from the sub was found scattered on the ocean floor off the coast of Patagonia. And finally, we of course have the OceanGate Titan submersible. This was a wild news story last year. For those who somehow didn't hear about this at the time or just need a refresher, I will refresh you. Stockton Rush was the CEO and co-founder of OceanGate, a privately owned deep-sea tourism company. The Titan was a submersible which had been used to tour the wreck of the Titanic before. There was a lot of controversy surrounding this thing, though. A lot of deep-sea experts looked at the Titan and were like, that is clearly not up to standard. That is a death trap waiting to happen. Well, the Titan's final dive would be on June 18th of 2023. There were 5 men on board. Paul Henry Narjolet, a French deep-sea explorer and Titanic enthusiast, a British billionaire named Hamish Harding, a Pakistani-British billionaire and businessman, Shahzada Dawood and his son, and finally Stockton Rush himself. The Titan began its descent, and everything seemed pretty routine, but about an hour and 45 minutes into the dive, all contact was lost between the submersible and its support vessel on the surface, and then it didn't surface at all. Days went by as a massive search was launched. There was all this speculation as to what had happened. Was the submersible destroyed? Had they managed to surface but just drifted off somewhere? Time was of the essence, because if they had sunk to the bottom, they'd be quickly running out of air. It was a ticking clock, and finally though, the Titan was found, at least what was left of it. It looked like the small vessel had imploded almost as soon as communication had ceased. The implosion would have taken less than a millisecond. Back in 2020, archaeologists kicked off the first ever scientific underwater excavation in the Black Sea, and now we're finally seeing what they found. Turns out beneath the waves of Kerpe, a small bay on Turkey's western Black Sea coast, there's an ancient harbor town that lasted an incredible 1500 years. In ancient Greek, Kerpe was called kalpe, meaning pot or jug, a nod to how important this place was for trade. It was a very important pit stop for ships moving along the coast. The team started digging after finding the remains of an old pier. Diving about 260 feet from shore, in just 13 feet of water, they've recovered artifacts spread over half an acre. They've found amphorae, which are the iconic jars used to haul goods, along with ceramics, lamps, pipe fragments, and of course, remains of shipwrecks. Some pieces date back 2,400 years. Kosali museum director Serkan Geduk says the site is, quote, extremely valuable in terms of emphasizing the commercial relations between the East and the West from the antiquity to the Ottoman period in the Black Sea. In 2000, a team of marine archaeologists led by Robert Ballard came across a Byzantine-era ship called the Sinabdi off the coast of Sinop, Turkey, about 1,050 feet down. Dates back between 410 and 520 CE, but looks like it just sank yesterday, and that's again thanks to the Black Sea's oxygen-free water. The hull, the deck, even the mast, which is still about 36 feet tall, are all in pretty good shape considering that this is a shipwreck. Radiocarbon dating confirmed it's around 1,500 years old, and the level of preservation gives researchers a very rare peek at how ships were built back then and what life on board might have looked like. Robert Ballard himself has called it a, quote, remarkable snapshot in maritime history. Even small details, like how the wood was joined, how the deck was structured, it's all still there, which is almost unheard of for a ship this old. And just a little west of Sinop, researchers discovered 3 more ancient shipwrecks about 330 feet down. 2 of them date back to the late Roman period between the 2nd and 4th centuries CE. The other is Byzantine, somewhere around the 5th to 7th century CE. What's wild is how much of these wrecks reveal about life on board, from the way the ships were built to how cargo is packed for long journeys. Some of the ships still show the original layout of the hulls, and archaeologists can even make educated guesses about the types of goods that were being traded. One of the Roman-era vessels, for example, had traces of jugs that probably carried wine or olive oil. The Byzantine one looked like it was carrying imports like ceramics. And next on the list, we have a sea monster, because every body of water has to have its own sea monster. For the Black Sea, it's the Black Sea sea serpent. So it doesn't roll off the tongue all that easy, but at least it gets the point across. Its physical description and the location, it's all in the title. Reports of large sea monsters in the Black Sea have been circulating ever since the 1700s. There are a few different types. The largest is about 130 feet long with a serpentine body and silvery skin. Others have described a slightly smaller creature around 100 feet long with dark greenish brown skin. And then there's the 50-foot creatures with the same long serpentine bodies. These ones also have fins. So it's not clear if these are all the same species or if there are multiple different creatures lurking in the murky waters of the Black Sea. On November 11th of 2007, the Kerch Strait, a narrow waterway connecting the Sea of Azov to the Black Sea, was hit by a powerful storm. A crazy storm hit the area, and amid all the chaos, a Russian tanker broke apart. It was carrying 4,000 tons of fuel oil, and when it split, a bunch of that stuff spilled straight into the water. One crew member didn't make it, unfortunately. The spill was not just some patch of oil floating out there. It coated beaches, marshes and wetlands along both the Russian and Ukrainian coasts. Birds and fish were smothered, and fishing communities obviously got hit hard. Cleanup crews tried their best, but with oil spread across miles of coastline, it felt almost impossible to get a handle on it. Even today, the Kerch Strait incident is considered one of the worst oil spills in the Black Sea. The USS Thresher. This was a US Navy attack submarine that sank on April 10th, 1963. The sub was cutting edge for the time, the latest in submarine technology, but during a deep sea dive test off the coast of Massachusetts, something went very wrong. Several garbled messages were received on the surface, and then nothing. So a search and rescue mission was launched, but nothing turned up. The sub wasn't discovered until 1964, torn to pieces on the sea floor. What's believed to have happened was that a pipe or a weld in the engine room failed, causing water to flood in. And when this happened, the submarine's reactor shut down, leaving it without power to move. The crew tried to use the ballast tanks to float back up, but the air system was toast. Moisture in the system turned into ice and blocked the valves, so the submarine couldn't rise, and with no way to stop it, the Thresher just kept sinking. The deeper it went, the more pressure it faced, until the hull finally would have given in. It was crushed by the intense pressure, and all 129 people on board were killed instantly. La Minerve. For decades, this was probably the most mysterious submarine disaster in history. Everyone knew something bad had happened, obviously, but no one knew where the sub actually was. La Minerve was a French submarine that mysteriously vanished in 1968. In fact, it's one of 4 subs that went missing that year. The sub had been on a routine training mission in the Mediterranean Sea when it suddenly disappeared without a trace. A search and rescue was launched, with ships and aircraft scouring the sea for any sign of the missing sub, but they found nothing. For decades, the fate of the submarine was a complete mystery. Families of the crew members were left in limbo, never knowing what happened to their loved ones. It wasn't until 2019, more than 50 years after it disappeared, that the sub was finally found by a company called Ocean Infinity. It was lying on the seabed about 45 kilometers off the coast of France. So what exactly caused the submarine to sink? It looked like there had been a catastrophic implosion, but the exact cause is still a mystery, and we'll likely never know. Another one of the mysterious submarine disappearances in 1968 was the USS Scorpion. The Scorpion was a US Navy submarine. It was on a routine patrol in the Atlantic Ocean when it suddenly disappeared. There was no distress call, no warning whatsoever. All that was known was that the captain had said they were closing in on a Soviet sub. It wasn't until several months later that wreckage from the Scorpion was found on the ocean floor, but the discovery raised more questions than answers. What caused the Scorpion to sink? Why did it happen so suddenly without any warning signs? Some think there could have been mechanical failure, but this was the Cold War, so most people think it had something to do with that. Next up, we have the HMS Thetis. On June 1st, 1939, the submarine was on a trial run in Liverpool Bay. Part of the trial was, of course, a test dive. Now, a lot went wrong here. First of all, the sub was packed. There were 103 men on board, double the amount that the vessel had been designed for. Most were sailors, but there were also engineers from the company that built the sub. The Thetis tried to dive, but it wasn't able to. It was too light. Lieutenant Frederick Woods, not knowing that the torpedo tubes were already full of water, let more in to try and make the vessel heavier, but there was a problem. A painter had accidentally blocked a crucial valve with enamel, making it seem safe to open the inner torpedo door. This caused a rush of water into the sub, sending it nose first to the seabed. It took hours for the SOS alarm to reach the Navy, and when they finally did arrive, things just got worse. They tried to lift the vessel, but the wire snapped and the sub sank once again. In the end, there were only 4 survivors. 99 men were still trapped inside. It wasn't until 4 months later that the submarine was raised and the bodies were recovered. Next up, we have the Ming 361 disaster. The Ming 361 submarine was on a mission. part of China's strategy to secure its maritime borders against the US Pacific Fleet. It was stationed in the Yellow Sea off China's northeast coast. It was primed for exercises, but things didn't go as planned. During a routine maneuver in April of 2003, disaster struck as the submarine's diesel engine malfunctioned, a glitch which quickly turned deadly. The engine's failure led to a carbon monoxide nightmare, sucking the oxygen out of the cramped vessel. The vessel did surface, but was basically a tomb. It drifted for 10 days before Chinese fishermen came across the vessel on April 25th. The entire crew was found slumped over their stations. The Kursk was the pride of the Russian Navy until a tragic incident in 2000. On August 12th of that year, during a naval exercise in the Barents Sea, the Kursk, a nuclear-powered Oscar second-class submarine, was out to prove its might, armed to the teeth with torpedoes, but little did anyone know this would be its final journey. At 7:29 a.m., a seismic jolt, 1.5 on the Richter scale, was detected. 2 minutes and 14 seconds later, a massive quake, 250 times stronger, sent shockwaves across northern Europe. Nobody knew it at the time, but the Kursk had met its fate. For 12 hours, the Russian Navy danced around the disaster, pretending all was well. In reality, though, the Kursk was laying on the seabed, its crew fighting this losing battle for survival. Rescue attempts were made, but all had failed, and finally the truth came out. There had been a catastrophic torpedo explosion. There were no survivors. Off the coast of Long Branch, New Jersey, about 5 miles out and 90 feet underwater, there's something you definitely don't expect to see on the ocean floor: 2 full-size steam locomotives from the 1850s, sitting upright side by side. You can still make out the wheels and boilers through the rust and marine growth, which is pretty cool considering they've been down there for over 160 years. The first clue of the engines came in 1985 when diver Paul Hepler was surveying the seafloor with a magnetometer. He kept getting massive metal readings. When he went down to check, he realized what he'd been picking up were 19th century locomotives. As for how they got down there, no one knows. There are no records of them being shipped, lost at sea, or involved in any accident, and there's no nearby wreckage. One theory is that they were being transported by boat along the east coast and somehow ended up overboard, maybe during a storm, but honestly, that's just speculation. This next story comes from a Reddit user named DoExercise2751, who wrote, "Submariner here. I was a sonar technician, and we were out on a mission and had the towed sonar arrays out. We were deep, and it picked up on a couple of bios, like shrimp and whales. It was quiet for about 20 minutes after we passed them, and all of a sudden, we heard a screeching noise that sounded like metal on metal. We thought we'd run into another submarine. The whole boat went into battle stations, aka each crew member went where they were assigned to be in the case of an emergency, and we woke up our SME, subject matter expert writers, to determine what the F that sound was. Went on for about 5 minutes, just in and out. It sounded like a song if you started to replay it. The whole thing was recorded, but the acting SME couldn't determine what it was, nor could the sonar chief. A message was sent out when we went to periscope depth, and the recording was sent to our squadron and the Office of Naval Intelligence once we pulled in. I do not know what happened afterward, but apparently the Navy collects these types of recordings regularly. From what we can tell, whatever caused that sound was close and almost as big as the boat. I couldn't tell if it was bio, like an animal, or another boat. There were no screw noises, we didn't take on any water, and we surely didn't hit anything. To this day, I still don't know what it was. Everyone was sure it was a bio, most likely animal we never discovered. At the time of this occurrence, only military submarines were capable of going that deep, so individually, we ruled it out as anything mechanical. Look at this incredible footage. What is this place? Is it some kind of lost ancient city now submerged underwater? Well, unfortunately not, but the story behind it is still really cool. What you're looking at here is the Neptune Memorial Reef, known as the world's first underwater cemetery. It sits off the coast of Florida. Instead of just scattering ashes in the water though, families can have them mixed into the concrete structures that make up the reef, which are sculpted into these beautiful columns and statues. Over time, these memorials then become homes for coral and fish, so they end up contributing to the ecosystem. It was built in the 2000s by the Ocean Research and Conservation Association. It's been growing ever since as corals colonize the sculptures and fish make their home in the nooks and crannies. In 2024, researchers discovered something completely unexpected deep in the Pacific Ocean. Oxygen being produced without sunlight way down on the ocean floor. Kinda crazy, because everyone learns that oxygen comes from plants and algae using sunlight. So hearing that it can come from the deep sea and pitch black, it's kinda hard to wrap your head around. Scientists were studying mineral-rich rocks called the polymetallic nodules, scattered across the seafloor in an area known as the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. These nodules contain metals like manganese, copper, nickel, and cobalt, the same stuff people want to mine for batteries. Researchers analyzed samples. They found that the nodules were actually producing oxygen in total darkness. In lab experiments, the minerals seemed to behave almost like tiny natural batteries, splitting water into oxygen and hydrogen, again with no help from sunlight. So scientists dubbed this dark oxygen. If this is happening in the ocean here on Earth, it could be happening in other places too. And by that I mean other planets, even ones possibly with no light at all. A team of researchers out in the Black Sea were supposed to be studying how rising sea levels after the last ice age affected ancient coastal areas. Instead, they ended up finding over 40 ancient shipwrecks, all just sitting there, perfectly preserved in the pitch black water. John Adams, the lead investigator, admitted the discovery was a, quote, complete bonus, because they weren't even looking for ships. The work was part of the University of Southampton's Black Sea Maritime Archaeology project, which had been mapping the seabed in Bulgarian waters when the wrecks started showing up on their scans. And we're not talking about a few, old planks here. These vessels range from the Byzantine era ships to Ottoman trading vessels, and some designs had never been seen before, outside of history books, drawings. That's amazing. Thanks to the Black Sea's oxygen-free conditions below 150 meters, the wood, rigging, even coils of rope are still mostly intact. As Adams explained, this environment has basically, quote, frozen these ships in time. One standout is a 17th to 19th century Ottoman ship, nicknamed the Flower of the Black Sea because of its intricate carvings, including posts topped with pedal designs. Using high-tech 3D imaging and remotely operated vehicles, the team has been able to study every detail of this ship graveyard without damaging the wrecks any further, that is. Technically they're all damaged because they're sitting at the bottom of the sea, but you know what I mean. This just happened a little over a week ago. So a sunny day at the beach turned into a nightmare when 2 sea mines exploded near the popular Ukrainian resort town of Zatoka. It happened around 11:30 a.m., right in the middle of the tourist rush, and left at least 3 people dead. A woman and 2 men who'd been swimming about 50 meters from the shore. Odessa Regional Chief Ola Kuiper said all of them have been killed by explosive devices while swimming in areas prohibited for recreation. The danger isn't new. The whole area, which includes Zatoka, has been off limits for swimming because of the risk of drifting mines, but some people are still taking the chance, and on this day, it ended in tragedy. After the blasts, footage showed stunned beachgoers standing silently along the sand, the water suddenly empty. Authorities have now launched a criminal case, calling it an accident for the moment, while bomb disposal crews are combing the shoreline for more mines. This isn't the first time this has happened either. Just 2 months ago, 2 men were killed by a mine in the same town. Ukrainian and Russian forces have littered the Black Sea with mines, but storms and currents keep tearing them loose, and some of them obviously end up drifting straight into tourist areas. In 2018, researchers working with the Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project made a pretty wild discovery. It was a 2,400-year-old Greek trading ship sitting almost perfectly preserved on the sea floor. And this is nuts. The team says a small piece of wood from it was carbon dated, confirming it as the, quote, oldest intact shipwreck known to mankind. The ship dates back to around 400 BCE, when the Black Sea was a major trading route. The design matches ships you'd normally only see painted on Greek pottery, except obviously this one is real. It was found over 2,000 meters, about 6,500 feet deep, in water with no oxygen. That lack of oxygen is what kept the wood and other materials from rotting away all this time. Professor John Adams, the project's main investigator from the University of Southampton, said a ship surviving intact from the classical world lying in over 2 kilometers of water is something I would never have believed possible. End quote. The discovery was made during a 3-year survey that mapped the Black Sea floor using deep water cameras originally developed for offshore oil and gas work. Adams says it could, quote, change our understanding of shipbuilding and seafaring in the ancient world. So down in the eastern Aegean, right between Greece and Turkey, there's this archipelago called Fernie, smack in the middle of ancient sea routes. Researchers starting from 2015 have been mapping underwater remains and ended up coming across more than 60 shipwrecks, entirely by surprise, right in waters they weren't originally targeting. Turns out Fernie has basically become the ancient shipwreck capital of the world. In a 2018 survey alone, the team documented 58 shipwrecks, some dating back to the Greek, Roman, and Byzantine eras. One of the project leads, Dr. Peter Campbell, said, "The excitement is difficult to describe. I mean, it was just incredible. I would call it probably one of the top archaeological discoveries of the century." End quote. And the reasons behind so many wrecks, it's not that this place was cursed or anything, it's because of its spot on major trade routes, plus treacherous conditions, narrow passages, sudden mountain windstorms. It just spells disaster for ships. Last summer, grad student and underwater archaeologist Efren Casio found himself off the coast of Nesebar, Bulgaria. Flashlight on his wrist, dredge in hand, he started clearing away shells and sand, and then he saw it. The outline of something man-made. We're about to witness something that's been lost in time and is about to be discovered again, he remembered thinking. It was the remains of a Greco-Roman fortress wall sitting just 300 feet from shore in about 12 feet of water. The team knew the fortress existed, but Acacio was the first to spot the wooden foundation buried under layers of sand and shells. He described his, quote, eureka moment when the first piece, then another showed up, saying, "You dig more and you find another piece. Somebody built this with their hands thousands of years ago, and here it is in front of me. Absolutely amazing." Amazing indeed. I mean, how often do we get to actually be right up close and then touch something this ancient? For some of us, never. So this section of wall would have once stood as part of a coastal defense for ancient Nesebar, a major Black Sea port in its day. Imagine a pill bug, but just make it the size of a small dog. That's basically what giant isopods are. They're creepy looking, no doubt, but they're very important. Whenever something big dies and sinks to the bottom of the ocean, like a whale, these isopods show up to eat it. A robot called Alvin studied one species and found out just how good these creatures are at surviving when there's almost no food. The robot watched one actively swimming around looking for seaweed that had sunk down. When it finds food, it uses these serrated mouth parts to grind it up. Scientists looked at the bacteria in their guts and found they can break down really tough materials that most animals can't even digest. Their whole body is just designed to squeeze every bit of nutrition out of whatever they find. Down in the deep ocean, food can be super rare, so you either adapt to eat basically anything or you die. These giant isopods are really good at making sure they don't die. They've been around for millions of years. Researchers using advanced robots found these bizarre underwater lakes sitting on the seafloor of the Red Sea, more than a mile down, about 1,770 meters deep. Yeah, there are actually lakes under the ocean. SpongeBob SquarePants going to the beach seems a lot less silly now. These underwater lakes exist because the water in these pools is so salty and dense it can't mix with regular seawater, so it just sits there. It's a bit like oil and water not mixing. These pools are absolutely deadly though. The salt content is dangerously high and there's no oxygen. So if a normal fish or crab accidentally swims into one, it dies almost immediately. The cells in their body just stop working. And there are tons of dead animals around the edges of these pools. But somehow, life still finds a way. There are bacteria and microbes that live in these pools, and that discovery is huge for helping us better understand how life works, because even in places we consider impossible for life, organisms can evolve to survive there. What you're looking at here is not a graphic. That big, long, wiry thing, that's a living creature. In 2020, a robot called Sebastian captured video of the longest animal ever found on Earth, estimated at 46 meters long or about 130 feet. Now, it's not technically one animal, but it functions like one. Scientists call it a colonial organism. It's thousands of tiny organisms that clone themselves and fuse together into one giant floating chain. Each little piece called a zooid has its own job. Some sting and catch prey, some digest food, some handle reproduction, but they're all connected and working together as one massive creature. It's built to catch as much prey as possible by spreading out over a huge distance. Off the coast of Los Angeles near Santa Catalina Island, robots found a massive dumping ground 3,000 feet deep. The seafloor down there is covered with old barrels, thousands of them, sitting there corroding. At first, scientists thought it was mostly DDT, which is a pesticide that was banned because it's so toxic. And yeah, they found a lot of that spread across the area, but then it got worse. The barrels themselves contain radioactive waste. Stuff like tritium and carbon-14 that hospitals and factories dumped between the 1940s and 60s. Back then, people figured the ocean was so big that you could just throw toxic waste down there and it would disappear. Out of sight, out of mind, but no, this stuff doesn't just disappear. It sits on the bottom, rusting and leaking poison into the water. In June of 2023, a submersible called Titan imploded on its way down to see the Titanic wreck. 5 people died instantly. After it went missing, they sent ROVs down to search the seafloor. The robots found the debris field. Pieces of the hull were mangled and scattered around. The tail section with the company logo was still recognizable. The back titanium dome was there as well. Looking at how everything was spread out and destroyed, it was clear what happened. The sub couldn't handle the pressure, and it imploded in a split second. During a deep-sea expedition off the coast of California in July 2016, scientists exploring the ocean floor spotted this really cool-looking purple orb thingy. Looks like one of the devil fruits in One Piece. The discovery happened during a mission aboard the research vessel EV Nautilus, which was exploring an underwater canyon near the Channel Islands. A remotely operated vehicle was crawling along the seafloor about 5,300 feet below the surface, and the cameras picked up the strange thing near a rocky ledge. The researchers watching the live video feed were immediately confused, saying, "What is that?" Another responding, "I'm stumped. I have no idea." And the cherry on top of this was that a crab was also hanging out nearby. It seemed interested in the object too, and at one point its leg bumped into the thing.
I'm being an all-out battle here right now.
All right, just zoom in again.
Oh, no.
Come on,
I'm
buddy.
almost never referred
What
to
if
a
it's an
crab.
egg sac of some sort?
It could be.
I love that one guy who's like, "Come on, buddy." Just a funny thing to say to a crab. Anyway, they decided to use the submersible's suction device to pull the strange object into a container before the crab could grab it. When it was brought back to the ship, it did something unexpected. The purple ball started to open up, and suddenly the team could see little body parts sticking out, like a tiny foot and some feeler-like things. That's when they realized it was actually a sea slug. The scientists thought it might have been a species no one had seen before, though, so they sent samples to the Harvard Museum of Comparative Zoology to take a closer look. During a deep-sea expedition off the coast of Australia in 2017, scientists hauled up a fish that immediately confused everyone on board. At first glance, it didn't look like it had a face. The discovery happened during a research voyage exploring the abyss east of Australia, where scientists were sampling marine life living roughly 4,000 meters or about 13,000 feet below the surface. Down there, sunlight never reaches the water, and the temperature sits just above freezing. Researchers examined the fish. Something about it looked completely wrong. The front of its head appeared smooth, featureless. There were no eyes, no nose, no mouth, at least not that anyone could see. The mouth actually sits underneath. But because of that strange appearance, the animal quickly picked up the nickname the Faceless Fish. First, the team wondered if they discovered an entirely new species, but they soon realized the fish had actually been documented before. It turned out to be Typhlonus nasus, a rare species of cusk eel. The species was first discovered during the famous HMS Challenger expedition in 1874. But sightings since then have been extremely rare. Scientists believe the fish's eyes are actually hidden beneath its skin. In the deep ocean, vision isn't very useful anyway. At those depths, the environment is permanently dark, so a lot of animals rely on other senses than sight. This story comes from a Reddit user named Brutus Black, who described a strange sighting while working on a pearl boat in the Arafura Sea, which sits between northern Australia and the island of New Guinea. He explained he spent about 18 months working on the vessel vessel. Part of his job involved standing watch in the wheelhouse. The task was fairly simple. The boat followed a route on the navigation system, and the person on watch had to make sure it stayed on course. If it drifted, they'd manually steer it back onto the path. His shift ran from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. Well, one morning around 7, he noticed something unusual off the port side of the boat. Sitting out in the water in the distance was what looked like a bright white cube. Judging distance at sea is difficult without landmarks, but he estimated it was roughly 200 meters away. Strangely, the object wasn't appearing on the boat's radar or navigation system, which normally shows other vessels in the area. It also wasn't moving with the waves the way floating objects usually do. So he grabbed a pair of binoculars to get a better look. Through the lenses, he could clearly see that the object had sharp edges and a square shape, confirming it really did look like a cube. Based on how large it appeared through the binoculars, he guessed it might have been about the size of a man. Later, the crewmate coming on shift brought him a coffee and saw the object as well, so he wasn't imagining it. Years afterward, when videos of the Pentagon's Tic Tac UFO sightings were released, the descriptions reminded the Reddit user of that strange white cube. In August 2023, scientists exploring the deepest part of the Baltic Sea came across something they really didn't expect to see. Their instruments started picking up huge plumes of gas rising from the bottom of the ocean. The leak was coming from a place called Landsort Deep, which is the lowest point in the entire Baltic Sea, about 400 meters or 1,300 feet below the surface. When researchers scanned the area with sonar, they realized this wasn't just a small vent. The methane was bubbling out across an area about 20 square kilometers. What was really odd too was how the gas behaved once it left the sea floor. Normally, methane released deep in the ocean dissolves into the surrounding water long before it gets very far, but here, the bubbles were rising almost the entire way to the surface. Researchers expect methane bubbles to travel maybe 50 meters upward before disappearing. Instead, the plumes were climbing around 380 meters, stopping just a few dozen feet short of the surface. That shouldn't really happen at that depth. One theory is that the Baltic Sea has an unusually thin layer of methane-eating microbes. Normally, these bacteria act like a natural filter, consuming up to 90% of methane before it escapes, but here, the layer is only a few centimeters thick, meaning far more gas may be slipping through. Exactly what's causing the leak? That's still unclear. If you're into shipwrecks, the Black Sea is like an underwater treasure chest. In 2015, a team of researchers made one of the most incredible finds in the region, an ancient Greek shipwreck, over 2,000 years old. What's amazing about these shipwrecks is how well preserved they often are. Because the Black Sea has a layer of anoxic, oxygen-free water deep down, anything that sinks below this layer doesn't really rot. It's like a giant underwater freezer. The wrecks, including the famous Greek merchant ship, are almost perfectly preserved. The shipwreck discovered in 2015 was found at about 2,000 meters or around 6,561 feet deep, and it was in incredible condition. The hull, the timbers, even the steering mechanism were all there. It was a huge discovery, being that it's so rare to find ancient wrecks in such good shape. This isn't the first or last wreck discovered here. There are dozens more, stretching back to the time of the ancient Greeks and Romans. The biggest question on everyone's mind now is what other surprises are sitting deep in the depths of the Black Sea? Could there be other sunken cities or undiscovered shipwrecks hiding down there? Well, the more researchers dive into the Black Sea, the more they find we've only scratched the surface. Now, this one's got a real mystery vibe about it. The Cave of the Swimmers, found in Egypt's Sahara Desert, doesn't seem like something that should be on this list. I mean, we are talking about underwater discoveries, but hear me out. Inside this cave, you'll find a series of ancient paintings on the walls, and some of them seem to depict people swimming. Something that doesn't quite add up. Why would ancient cave paintings show people swimming in the middle of the desert? I'm sure the Sahara hasn't always been a desert, but it has been for about 2 to 3 million years. These paintings, though, are only estimated to be around 10,000 years old, but they seem to show people swimming. So could there have once been a river or lake in the area that we just don't know about? The Cave of the Swimmers is famous for these unusual paintings that seem to suggest there was some kind of large body of water right where the desert is now. Lake Titicaca is a massive high-altitude lake between Bolivia and Peru. It's already famous for being one of the highest navigable lakes in the world, but here's where it gets really interesting. There's a submerged temple underneath it. Divers have found ruins in the lake that some believe could be connected to the ancient Tiwanaku civilization, a culture that existed in the Andes before the rise of the Inca. But the thing is, no one really knows how these structures ended up underwater. Some researchers believe that these temples were part of an ancient city, maybe even built to align with the stars or the movements of the sun, which was really important for Andean cultures. The theory is that Lake Titicaca could have been much lower in the far past, and that over time it flooded, swallowing parts of the city. Another thing that's really cool about these remains is that the stones used to build them aren't like any other stones found in the area. Definitely odd. Could this submerged site be part of a larger, forgotten civilization? Divers are still trying to map out just how far this site extends beneath the water. Now this one's really out there. Lake Baikal in Siberia is not only one of the oldest and deepest lakes in the world, but it's also a place where people claim to have found signs of an underwater alien base. The story goes that divers in the lake have reported seeing strange geometric shapes and metallic objects deep underwater. Some have even said they've seen alien beings. Some of these objects allegedly seem a little too perfectly shaped to be natural, and there are rumors that these objects could be remnants of a super advanced civilization, possibly even extraterrestrial, or that there's a currently existing alien base deep under the water. There have been reports of mysterious structures and strange energy fields being detected deep under the lake. Of course, it's said that these reports have been leaked by whistleblowers who have been told to stay quiet. What's really going on here? Are there just odd but natural rock formations, or is there something stranger going on? Lake Baikal is remote and deep enough that it could make for a pretty good place for a group of alien researchers to park their ships. Next up, we have the underwater cave beneath Paganica Bay in Croatia, which is not a recommended dive. The place is known for being incredibly dangerous. 4 people have died here between 2002 and 2015 on 3 separate occasions. In 2002, a diver was found dead 177 feet down in a cave wearing a dive suit but had no mask on. There was also a 12-inch blade sticking out of his chest. Now at first this seemed like a clear-cut case of foul play. 2 suspects were even arrested, but after they looked more into the diver's last dive profile from his dive computer, the cave's dimensions and other forensic evidence, it became clear that he'd likely taken his own life. It seemed that the diver, known only as MK, had gone in alone, got lost, and ran out of oxygen. As he began to drown, he found an air pocket, but knowing he wouldn't have enough air to make it back, he chose to go out quickly rather than suffer a slow, terrifying death from drowning. Most people have never heard of the Ventnor, and honestly I hadn't either until I dug into this. It was a steamship that left Westport in 1902 carrying the exhumed remains of 501 Chinese men who'd lived and worked in New Zealand during the gold rush. These men had paid into a community fund so that when they died, their bodies could be sent back home. The Ventnor was supposed to make that happen, but the ship hit a reef and it went down. 13 crew members died, and every coffin sank with the ship. For over 100 years, nobody could find the wreck. But in 2012, a small team led by John Albert and underwater explorer Keith Gordon followed a tip from locals who thought they knew the general area. Their echo sounder picked up a big shape on the seafloor. The following year, they sent down an ROV, and yes, they'd finally found the ship. Divers went down in 2014 and brought up artifacts, but no bones. It wasn't until May of 2020, while a team was filming a documentary called Fallen Leaves, that an ROV slipped inside the wreck and finally found actual human remains. Back in 1708, a Spanish ship called the San Jose got blown up by the British near Colombia. It was packed with about $17 billion worth of gold, silver, and emeralds. Spain was using all this treasure to pay for a war, but it all ended up at the bottom of the ocean. People searched for this wreck for over 300 years. Then in 2015, they finally found it using underwater robots from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Robots took pictures of bronze cannons with special designs, pottery pieces, and gold coins all spread out over the seafloor. You'd think finding billions in treasure would be good news, right? But not exactly. As soon as they announced the discovery, unsurprisingly, everyone started fighting over it. Colombia says it's theirs because it's in their waters. Spain says they still own it because it was a military ship, and there's actually a UN rule about that. Then there's the Caracara people from Bolivia who say the silver belongs to them because their ancestors were forced to mine it. On top of all that, an American salvage company called Sea Search Armada claims they should get it because they did research that helped find it. So now nobody can touch the treasure. The Colombian Navy has their own robots down there basically standing guard over billions of dollars as that's just sitting on the ocean floor, all because nobody can agree on who gets what. When scientists started sending ROVs down to explore the deep ocean near hot vents and trenches, they expected some weird stuff, but in 2002, a robot called Ventana found something near Monterey Canyon that was way weirder than anyone predicted. They were checking out a dead whale on the seafloor when they noticed these strange pink feathery things all over the bones, and it turns out these are worms called osedax, which means bone eater in Latin. And that name is exactly what they do. The females burrow into the bones of dead animals to eat the fats and proteins inside. You can only see their feathery parts sticking out because the rest of their body is deep inside the bone. They don't have a mouth or a butt, instead they make acid to drill into the bone, and they have special bacteria living in them that break down the bone's collagen and fats. The male worms are tiny, so tiny in fact that they live inside the female's body. Hundreds of microscopic males can live in a single female. Their only job is to fertilize her eggs. So basically the female is this bone-eating machine that carries around hundreds of males inside her. And these zombie worms are everywhere down there, eating up all the bones they can find. Between 2015 and 2017, a research team working on the Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project was sailing along the Bulgarian coast, mapping the seafloor to understand how rising sea levels after the last ice age affected the people who once lived there. That was the entire goal, but while they were mapping the seabed, their scans started showing shapes that definitely weren't natural. One after another, these outlines turned out to be shipwrecks. There were more than 40 of them. John Adams, the lead investigator, said the whole thing was a complete bonus because they weren't even looking for ships. The area they were surveying just happened to be the perfect place for old wrecks to survive. Below about 150 meters, the Black Sea doesn't have any oxygen, which means bacteria can't break things down the way they do in other oceans. Adams said this environment has basically frozen these ships in time, and he wasn't kidding. Some of the vessels still have intact rigging, carved decoration. There are even coils of rope lying where the crew left them. The ships are from different time periods, from the Byzantine era to later Ottoman trading vessels. One of the most famous is an Ottoman ship from somewhere between the 17th and 19th centuries, nicknamed the Flower of the Black Sea because of the carved post topped with little petal designs. Using ROVs, the team has been able to study every inch of these wrecks without even having to touch them.